Imagine a man, rejected from art school, a face in the crowd of a Vienna homeless shelter. He possesses no wealth, no connections, no remarkable talent, just a burning resentment and a chillingly persuasive voice. This man, once a nameless corporal wandering the desolate trenches of World War I, would rise from utter obscurity to command the will of a nation, plunging the world into its most devastating conflict. How did this happen? How did Adolf Hitler, the failed artist, transform himself into the Führer of Germany, a figure whose name is now synonymous with tyranny and destruction? This isn't just a story about a single man. It's a terrifying look at how charisma, crisis, and a nation's desperation can forge a path to catastrophe. Born in 1889 in Braunau am Inn, Austria-Hungary, Hitler's early life was unremarkable. He was an average student, often clashing with his authoritarian father, Alois, who wanted him to follow in his footsteps as a customs official. But young Adolf had other dreams. He envisioned himself as a great artist. After his father's death, he moved to Vienna, the vibrant cultural heart of the empire, to pursue his artistic ambitions. Twice he applied to the prestigious Academy of Fine Arts, and twice he was rejected. The Academy told him he had more talent for architecture, but lacking the formal education, that door was also closed. Cast adrift, Hitler's Vienna years were marked by poverty and aimlessness. He drifted through men's hostels, selling postcards of his paintings to scrape by. It was in this environment, surrounded by the city's potent mix of grand culture and fierce political currents, that his worldview began to solidify. Vienna was a hotbed of pan-German nationalism and virulent anti-Semitism. Hitler absorbed these ideas, weaving them into a personal philosophy that blamed Jewish people and other minorities for his own failures and for the perceived weaknesses of the German-speaking world. This period of hardship didn't break him. It forged the core of the hateful ideology that would later define his political career. When World War I erupted in 1914, it gave Hitler something he'd been missing: a purpose. He enthusiastically enlisted in the Bavarian army and served as a dispatch runner on the Western Front. He was a brave soldier, decorated twice with the Iron Cross for his courage. For him, the war was a noble struggle, a defining experience. So when Germany surrendered in 1918, he was devastated. Lying in a military hospital, temporarily blinded by a gas attack, he heard the news. He described this moment as his second, more profound blindness. He believed Germany had not been defeated on the battlefield but stabbed in the back by treacherous politicians, Marxists, and, in his mind most of all, the Jews. This myth of the stab in the back became a cornerstone of his future propaganda. After the war, a defeated and humiliated Germany was forced to sign the Treaty of Versailles. The terms were harsh: massive reparations, territorial losses, and the infamous war guilt clause that placed all blame on Germany. The treaty created deep and lasting resentment across German society. Amid this chaos, Hitler remained in the army and was assigned to an intelligence unit tasked with spying on radical political groups in Munich. In 1919, his orders led him to a meeting of a small, obscure group called the German Workers' Party. He was supposed to just observe, but during a debate, he stood up and delivered an impromptu, fiery speech that captivated the members. The party's leader, Anton Drexler, was so impressed he immediately invited Hitler to join. It was a fateful decision. Hitler quickly realized his greatest weapon was his voice. He was a mesmerizing public speaker. He could tap into the public's fears, their anger over the Versailles Treaty, their economic anxieties during the hyperinflation of the early 1920s, and their desire for a restored national pride. He rose rapidly through the party ranks, rebranding it as the National Socialist German Workers' Party, the Nazi Party for short. He designed its powerful symbols, the swastika and the red, white, and black flag, creating a potent visual identity. He organized his own paramilitary force, the Sturmabteilung, or SA, the Brown Shirts, to protect his rallies and violently intimidate political opponents. The failed artist had found his true medium: mass politics. In 1923, inspired by Mussolini's March on Rome, Hitler decided it was time to seize power himself. On November 8th, he and his brown shirts stormed a public meeting at a Munich beer hall, firing a shot into the ceiling and declaring a national revolution. This event, known as the beer hall Putsch, was a disaster. The police quickly crushed the poorly planned coup, and Hitler was arrested and put on trial for high treason. But once again, he turned a failure into a victory. He used the courtroom as a stage, delivering passionate speeches that were reported in newspapers across Germany. He transformed himself from a local rabble-rouser into a national figure, a patriot willing to risk everything for his country. Though found guilty, he was given a lenient sentence of just 5 years in the comfortable Landsberg prison, of which he would only serve about 9 months. It was in prison that Hitler wrote his infamous political manifesto, Mein Kampf, or My Struggle. Part autobiography, part political doctrine, the book laid out his radical vision for Germany's future. It detailed his anti-Semitic and racist worldview, his belief in the superiority of an Aryan race, and his call for Lebensraum, or living space, for the German people to be conquered in Eastern Europe. At the time, few took the book seriously. It was poorly written and filled with rambling diatribes, but it was a chillingly accurate blueprint for the horrors he would later unleash. Released from prison, Hitler resolved to take power not by force but through the ballot box. The mid-1920s were relatively stable years for Germany, and the Nazi Party struggled to gain traction. But then, in 1929, the Wall Street crash triggered the Great Depression. The global economic crisis hit Germany harder than almost any other country. Businesses failed, unemployment skyrocketed, and people's life savings were wiped out. The political center collapsed as desperate Germans flocked to extremist parties on the left and the right. This was the moment Hitler had been waiting for. His message, once confined to the fringe, now resonated with millions. He promised to restore order, create jobs, defy the Treaty of Versailles, and make Germany strong again. Nazi propaganda, masterminded by Joseph Goebbels, was relentless and sophisticated. They held massive torchlit rallies, plastered posters everywhere, and used new technologies like radio and film to spread their message of national renewal and scapegoat their enemies. In the 1930 election, the Nazis made a stunning breakthrough, increasing their seats in the Reichstag from just 12 to 107, becoming the second largest party. 2 years later, in July 1932, they became the largest. Despite his electoral success, the German establishment, including the aging President Paul von Hindenburg, distrusted Hitler, viewing him as a vulgar and dangerous upstart. However, the government was paralyzed, unable to form a stable majority. Conservative politicians, believing they could control Hitler, made a fateful miscalculation. They persuaded Hindenburg that appointing Hitler as Chancellor was the only way to break the political deadlock. They thought they could use his popular support for their own ends and then discard him. On January 30th, 1933, Adolf Hitler was sworn in as Chancellor of Germany. The democratic system had, in effect, handed power to its deadliest enemy. Once in power, Hitler moved with terrifying speed to dismantle democracy. A month after he took office, the Reichstag building was set on fire. A communist was blamed, and Hitler used the incident to persuade President Hindenburg to sign the Reichstag fire decree. This emergency act suspended basic civil liberties, freedom of speech, assembly, and the press, and allowed the government to arrest political opponents without charge. It was the legal foundation for the Nazi dictatorship. In the following weeks, political opponents were rounded up and sent to the first concentration camps, like Dachau. By March, Hitler pushed the Enabling Act through Parliament, a law that gave him the power to pass laws without the Reichstag's consent for 4 years. Democracy in Germany was officially dead. With all political opposition crushed, Hitler turned his attention to consolidating his power within his own party. The SA, led by Ernst Röhm, had grown to over 3 million members and was becoming a threat. Röhm and other SA leaders wanted to merge with the army, which Hitler and the military elite opposed. On June 30th, 1934, in what became known as the Night of the Long Knives, Hitler had Röhm and hundreds of other SA leaders, as well as other political rivals, summarily executed. The brutal purge secured the army's loyalty and sent a clear message. Hitler's authority was absolute and unopposed. When President Hindenburg died 2 months later, Hitler merged the offices of Chancellor and President, declaring himself Führer and Reich Chancellor. He was now the undisputed dictator of Germany. Hitler's regime brought about a swift economic recovery, largely through massive public works projects and rapid rearmament, all in violation of the Versailles Treaty. Unemployment vanished, and for many Germans who weren't targeted by the regime, life seemed to be improving. This economic miracle won Hitler immense popularity and loyalty. Simultaneously, the Nazis began to systematically implement their racist ideology. The Nuremberg Laws of 1935 stripped Jewish citizens of their rights, forbade them from marrying non-Jews, and began their segregation from German society. This legal persecution escalated into open violence on November 9–10, 1938, during Kristallnacht, the Night of Broken Glass, a coordinated pogrom where Jewish synagogues, homes, and businesses were destroyed across Germany and Austria. On the international stage, Hitler played a brilliant high-stakes game of bluff and aggression. He withdrew Germany from the League of Nations, remilitarized the Rhineland, annexed Austria in the Anschluss, and then set his sights on the German-speaking Sudetenland region of Czechoslovakia. European leaders, haunted by the memory of World War I and desperate to avoid another conflict, pursued a policy of appeasement. At the Munich Conference in 1938, Britain and France agreed to Hitler's demands, sacrificing Czechoslovakia in the hope of securing peace for our time. But Hitler had no intention of stopping. Appeasement only convinced him that the Western democracies were weak and would not stand in his way. In March 1939, he broke his promise and invaded the rest of Czechoslovakia. The final act was the invasion of Poland. After signing a shocking non-aggression pact with his ideological enemy, Joseph Stalin's Soviet Union, which secretly included a plan to partition Poland between them, Hitler felt secure. On September 1, 1939, German forces stormed across the Polish border. This time, Britain and France did not back down. 2 days later, they declared war on Germany. The small-town boy from Austria, the failed artist from Vienna, the fanatical corporal from World War I, had finally ignited the global conflict he had long craved. World War II had begun. The dark vision outlined in Mein Kampf was about to become a devastating reality for the entire world. Thanks so much for watching. If you found this history compelling, please hit that like button and subscribe to our channel for more deep dives into the figures and events that shaped our world. See you next time.